I am Dana Dubois, and this is I Write Out Loud. Oh, I'm so happy to see everyone joining. Dennis, Stephanie, Cheryl, Donna, thank you for joining me today. For those of you who may be new here, I Write Out Loud is my new home for my creative nonfiction writing. And this is week 2 to the I Write Out Loud project. And I will provide a summary of what that is and what that means while we're waiting for folks to join. I've got my hand on my little dog here because I think she's about to start barking. Hopefully not. Hopefully she stays quiet. Hi, Karen. So I Write Out Loud is my home on Substack for my creative nonfiction writing, both historical and going forward. And it is a brand new project. As I said, today is day 6, and a lot of thought went into the launch of this project, and kind of a lot of soul searching of who am I and where do I want my work to live and how do I want it to appear. And part of that was acknowledging that in today's crazy political world that we're in, I did very little memoir writing last year relative to the 2 years that preceded it, where I was quite prolific, mostly on Medium. And a really big part of that was feeling like my words were navel-gazy in the context of this administration and all of the harm that it's doing. I felt like in my time, which has its limits, even though I do a lot, I needed to be focused on the work that I did last year, building out the Daily Whatever show, elevating voices that were being marginalized, and trying to come up with solutions for how to fight this regime and build community of with folks who are like-minded, and all of those things. I'm going to continue doing those things. I have loved doing those things, but I have really missed my writing, and not just the show recaps and kind of writing about politics, but the writing that I do because my soul loves it. And as I was kind of coming around to this idea, part of it was motivated because I got really angry for the loss of all of the art out there, and all of the music out there, and all of the writing, all the innovation, the science, all of the work that we should be doing because we love it, we're passionate about it, and it moves our souls and it moves the world, that wasn't getting done because of this administration. We've lost so much to, sorry, I'm moving a little more to the side here, to the immensely awful powers that are in charge. And I didn't want my memoir writing to be one of those losses. And so this is my act of audacity in the face of burgeoning tyranny, is I am going to continue writing. I am going to share my words, even in the ones that could be considered fraught politically, like today's story is. And I hope to inspire others who have maybe hesitated to fully unleash their creativity into this world because they feel like there's no space for it, given all of the trauma that's out there. And I want to say to everyone, there is room. Not only is there room for it, but we need it. We need to stay connected to the beauty that moves us. So if my project succeeds in any way, it will be motivating others to do something similar. And also, I really wanted a home for my body of work and for where it would live moving forward. And I spent the last year struggling with where that would be. It had always been Medium, and Medium went through some changes. Lots of people left Medium to come to Substack primarily, as I did. Substack is my home as a writer, and Medium by design is behind a paywall, so it's not a great place to archive the work that I've done. I wanted it to be here, and I wanted it to be beautiful, and I wanted it to be accessible. And so the I Write Out Loud project is not just a repository, but kind of an up-leveling of my work. I'm putting a new brand palette on all of the stories so that everything has a very consistent look and feel. and it looks like the way I want it to look, to something that to my eyes is beautiful and meaningful. I am recording each and every one of my stories because I want it both to be accessible to folks who would rather read than listen, but also because I don't want AI to lead the way on the voice. I want the voice to be mine. And also, this is the super woo part, so stay with me. I feel like it's sort of casting a spell of good intent to go back and revisit and read my words aloud again. And today's story was a really good example of the power of that for me, and I hope for the broader world. And the same with my recent stories. I wrote a story over the weekend that I had planned to share today or tomorrow, and I started recording it right before the show, and I was like, it's not right yet. So I stopped recording it. There's something about saying one's words aloud that makes us more accountable. So, all of that is background for the I Write Out Loud project. And the other thing about it is that it's an intense sharing because I have this archive and I really want to get it out there. So I'm posting a story nearly every day. I succeeded at that last week, all 5 weekdays. I had a new story. I have a schedule mapped for this week. And my goal is when it hits 88 stories on that page, it will be a body of work that feels robust and good. It will not be complete because I will continue writing. I have more than 88 stories I want to bring over. I'm going to continue writing new stories. But 88 is that magic number where I'll be like, I have done a thing. Eights are my favorite number. My stories go live at 8:08 a.m. Eastern time each day. So 5:08 my time. And 88 stories, and it's also $88 to subscribe at the founding level. And I'm hoping to get at least 88 new paid subscribers through the launch of this project. It is always uncomfortable to ask for support, but I will end my little opening and get into this week's story by saying I have what I hope are accessible levels to support this at the paid level. If you are able, it's $4 a month, $40 a year, which is 20% off the regular price. I plan to run that throughout 2026. And then I have a founding membership, which is 88, as I mentioned. And I am doing a little something extra for anyone who is a paid subscriber. All of the stories, all of the audio of me reading the stories, and all of these recap days are ahead of the paywall. I want this work to be available to everyone. So, oh, hi, Tariq or Tariq. I'm not sure which way to pronounce your name. You are a new paid subscriber. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. I see you in the chat. So all of that work will always be ahead of the paywall. So a good deal of becoming a paid subscriber is simply supporting the work because you believe in it, which is great. I am doing a once a week kind of I spill the tea recap live that is only for paid subscribers. We did that yesterday. It was super fun. It was really intimate. And we got into some really good conversations, and you all helped me guide the theme for this week, which I loved. So we shared some tea. We looked at what was going forward. And for founding members, I'm also offering a 30-minute session with me. That can be around writing, it can be around editing, it can be around building your presence on Substack. I'm starting to get a lot of inquiries of like, hey, can you hop on a call with me? I love your work and I'd love to learn more about how to do it. And as much as I would love to help everyone, it would take up a lot of my day if I said yes to every person who asked. And so I'm making it a benefit of being a founding member. And I would welcome your support. I also welcome anyone who becomes simply a free subscriber. That also signals to Substack that this is valuable content that people want to read or review. And I appreciate that as well. So at any level you can support my work, I am so, 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 so grateful. And Karen, I'm laughing at your comment. Dana, you are very generous, but you still have work to do. I do. And there are never enough hours in the day. Isn't that true? I did share some behind the scenes, like how I do things and helpful tips in the live yesterday. So those sorts of tips may slip out in those paid subscriber lives. So, with all of that, thank you to everyone who is here. And I'm going to jump in and get started. My other screen over here holds the story we'll be talking about today. And it is called What to Expect When You Weren't Expecting a Gender-Nonconforming Child. And I'm going to pat myself on the back because this was back when I was writing all my headlines by myself before I had any tools helping me. And I think this is one of the better headlines or titles I've ever written for a story. Thank you for linking it in the chat, Karen. I really appreciate it. You are the world's best moderator and supporter, and I really appreciate it and you. So this story is, well, it's kicking off a week that I am dubbing Origin Week. And this is my origin story week. This was the theme that, hold on, I'm opening my notes over here. This is the theme that we came up with yesterday in the paid subscriber chat. I was like, here's a few themes I'm thinking about for the week in terms of selecting which stories I want to share. And I was like, it's only week 2. I feel like there are a few stories that when I wrote them at the time, I didn't realize they were origin stories, but in hindsight, they clearly are. And I think while we're at the beginning, we could do a Julie Andrews. Should I sing? Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. No one would ever accuse me of being Julie Andrews, but these are foundational pieces that impacted my writing going forward. And so that's what a lot of these will be this week. I think it might be all 5 days. It might be 4 of the days if I get this new story out. That will be one of the days, but still not ready. So there are a few consistent themes that my stories tend to touch on. And it was really interesting as I got started as a writer on Medium, now nearly 3 years ago, where everyone was like, niche, niche, niche. You need to have a niche, right? From a niche perspective. And I, in typical fashion, it wasn't like I wrote a strategy of who and what I was going to be and write about. I was like, I don't have a niche. I'm going to simply start writing because I'm feeling compelled to write. And I'm not sure what my niche will be. And I figured it out as I went. That tends to be how all my work happens. And I would argue that's how an awful lot of good work happens. Some people maybe are more methodical and they outline and research and they emerge into a world and they know what they want to write about or create about in some form. That's not me. And so this was one of the very first stories I wrote. And indulge me, I'm going to go back in time. Like April of 2023, I started on Medium. And I had very little idea what I was doing. I was trying to figure out this ecosystem. And I was like, oh, I think it's maybe possible to earn money here. I should have this space to write and maybe I'll earn some coffee money. And that would feel pretty good. And I, being me, sort of started writing a few things and I'd share it on my social media profiles and be like, cool. So I brought some people here to read, but 96% of my traffic is external because I'm sending people here, but I don't know how to have people find me who live here on Medium. And I came to recognize that Medium was, and still for the most part, is blind to external traffic. How do people inside Medium find me? On day 1 on Medium, I made 37 cents though. And I was like, fuck yeah, I made money. It was kind of a rush. Those 37 cents felt impactful. But I came to realize that there were publications on Medium and that people submitted their work to publications and that perhaps that was a way to be found. And so I had this idea of I'm going to try to get added to a couple publications. And I did, and it was such a rush. I didn't realize it was pretty easy to get added to a publication back then because to me, I was like, ooh, I did it. But my writing was still very insular. And this story that I wrote, What to Expect When You Weren't Expecting a Gender-Nonconforming Child, was something very near, dear, close to my heart. I mean, it was about my child. So obviously it was, but I'm trying to think of which direction to go with on this. it was something that where I thought I had thought leadership, something that I had experience with that not a lot of people did, but that was increasingly becoming part of our cultural conversation. And so um, I wrote this story, reading the language of the story. Just from a purely like editorial content perspective, I was kind of cringing. And it's funny because when my children, who are visual artists, look at their work from even just a few months ago, let alone years ago, they're like, cringe. They hate it. I don't usually feel that when I read my writing. This story made me cringe. It's very earnest. It's very like, this is an explainer. I'm here to explain. It's a voice I don't really write in. It's not particularly memoir-y. It's more of an essay, but it's like, I'm the little Miss Voice of a generation. It's kind of how I read it as like momsplaining. I don't know if that's a word, but if it's not, I'm making it up. It felt very momsplainy to me. And I debated kind of recrafting this for 2026 for my current voice alone. And I was like, nope, this is I write out loud, and I want it to show evolution as a writer, not just where I am right now. Self-important and pretentious, maybe a little bit. Karen saying I need the voice box Lawrence uses for the funny voices. I do, so I could be like, I'm the voice of a generation. I don't have one of those fancy things. In fact, I'm just recording on my phone today. So um, the vibe and the writing itself made me cringe, but what really broke my heart was the politics behind it and the assumptions of how the world worked in 2023 that are so untrue now in 2026. Those didn't make me cringe. Those broke my heart rereading this. And part of me felt like, can I post this? Because some people are going to see it and they're just going to think this is my current view. And I decided it's I write out loud. It's an origin story. At the very bottom, I put a note on it saying when it was published and how things have shifted. But it felt important to capture as a moment in time. And the crazy thing was, I had an inkling of fear come in as I was posting this of like, is this still safe to post? And then I'm like, I already answered that question, asked and answered. I'm not obeying in advance. I write out loud. I'm not like I decided when Trump was elected after reading Project 2025 and considering it that I would continue to publish. I have a story about that I will eventually share here as well. And so that's my moral code. I shared the story. So to talk about kind of the 2023 energy versus 2026 reality, which is what I think is really interesting about sharing this now, is in 2023, when I wrote this story, I really thought we were mid-cultural expansion. I thought that it was messy, but things were moving forward. And I thought that LGBTQ folks had rights that were inviolate, not eroding, even though there were political challenges, and I knew that, and there was legislation, and I nod to that in this essay. There was a level of safety in how I wrote about this that was, well, it was a presumption of safety. That's the only way I know how to say that. That was so misguided. And it breaks my heart to think of that. And um, yeah, it's pretty devastating. My naivete in the moment of writing this is quite clear if you reread this essay. And reading it now, what strikes me the most is just the tone. It's sort of optimism, but it's more just an assumption that the kids and their parents who I'm trying to guide are safe. And in the story, I even say this is normal now, and it's okay to accept that. And I'm like, wow, that is not the full story in 2026. This is not the advice I would give today. So I am not flip-flopping. I am living and learning, and it's a hard truth to learn. So, um, I'm looking at my notes here and say, I didn't want to retroactively make myself smaller and to post this with an apology. And I'm not apologizing. Who would I be apologizing to? This was the world we were living in. But what's interesting is that this story was the origin story on a couple of levels. It was the origin story of me as a writer. In writing this story, here's a funny behind the scenes. I pitched it to Age of Empathy, publication on Medium. It was my introduction to them. And because sometimes the universe works like this, Arpad was the editor who picked it up. Arpad Naji, I think I'm saying his last name correct. I've only read it. I've never heard him say it. He was the editor who got my story. And in the derpy little private notes, which is the only way Medium has to talk to for editors and writers to talk still, he said, I absolutely love this essay. I've never read an essay that both has a moral neutrality to it, but also has a point of view on such a heated topic. And I thought that was such a wonderful compliment to the story. The other thing that was so interesting was that his young teen daughter was going through the same sort of journey that I describe in this essay that my daughter went through. And so somehow the universe made this happen, that the right editor found my story. And the Boost program was new. And he said, I really think this might qualify for a Boost. I'm going to introduce you to our editor-in-chief, Christopher Robin. I think some of you here may know him. He is not active on Medium anymore and just a little bit active on Substack. He's more active as a painter and just artist than he is as a writer, but he writes from time to time. And he was very early on Medium and he founded a bunch of publications and really built this community of writers that was quite active in 2023. He read the story, loved it, successfully got it boosted, and said, do you want to come on and be an editor on my publications? And so I, of course, said yes. And that's where I found my community on Medium. And everything that happened after that, which was truly like a rush and a push of all of these exciting developments for me as a writer and publisher, happened after that. And so this is truly my origin story. It got boosted. I think it made like $180. So I went from 37 cents to $180, like kind of overnight or over week, maybe. I don't remember how long the time gap was. I'd have to go back and look, but it was within days. And I was like, holy shit. And at the same time, a story that I had submitted that was actually one before this, unbeknownst to me, got published on, what's that publication called? The one about middle age, shit, I'm forgetting. But I had two stories boosted at once. And then from this story, from What to Expect, it really very strongly came forward that I wanted to be a voice to support parents and caregivers who are on this journey with their kids who are going through gender transition. And so I I created it. And well, actually, I pitched it to Medium first, and they said, build it and you can be a Boost nominator. And so I was. And Pink Hair and Pronouns is the publication. That's a lot of plosives. Pink Hair and Pronouns publication I proclaimed was, I don't know, come up with some more P words. But that was the origin story of that publication, which for a couple good years on Medium was the home of advice and storytelling for parents and caregivers of gender-nonconforming kids. And some of my writers were parents and caregivers, grandparents, concerned friends and family members. And some of them were gender nonconforming or queer in some way themselves, and they were giving advice or telling their stories as a guidepost for parents and caregivers. But that was the primary audience. I'm using the past tense simply because Medium has devolved quite a bit. My writers have gone. I occasionally still post a story there, and I do have a small presence on Substack for pink hair and pronouns, but it's not where I'm primarily focused, in no small part because my child kind of came out the other end of her gender journey. It may continue to journey on over time, I can't say, but as of now, she is back to using she, her, or she, they pronouns, presenting very feminine. This just is no longer really her focus. So it started to feel a bit disingenuous because it's not something that my family is currently managing. But it is something that, it was a journey we were on for quite some time. I have posted quite a few stories, and I'm sure I will be sharing them over time here on I Write Out Loud. And this is one thing politically that I find really interesting, and perhaps you will too, but it's sort of my point of view on um, why I did it and why I continue to do it. When I originally built Pink Hair and Pronouns, I wasn't doing it to politically champion for trans kids. That wasn't I wasn't not doing that, but it wasn't the primary audience, and let me explain that a bit. I'm also realizing that I'm not in the chat, and I wanna join the chat. So here I go doing that. Make sure my sound is off, and I'm gonna say a quick hello. I really just cannot get my lighting right here, but whatever, I have a lot of glare on my face, it's sunny today. Um, Thanks, Karen. I'll write it here too. So, um, defending trans kids politically was part of the mission statement. But here was my kind of editorial point of view and lived experience. It was my child came out during the pandemic. So pretty like about a year into the pandemic, we were still schooling at home. I didn't know how isolated they were until we came back and she went back to school, and I got to see how she blossomed. And I was like, oh yeah, she was pretty despondent, I guess, in contrast. But I will read this part out loud in a moment from the story. What really happened for me was I had a child who was very feminine and always very feminine presenting, both in terms of looks and interests and chosen friends. There was never a hint of gender dysphoria in her upbringing. And then right before she turned 11, I should actually read this part in the story. I'll come back to it, but I'll come back to that part of the story. So as a parent, my challenge wasn't, wow, I have a dysphoric child who is telling me I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy from a very young age, and I need to know how to manage that. That is a similar but different phenomenon. What I was seeing here in my liberal blue bubble of a city in Seattle is, wow, it seems to be a new norm that during adolescence, and I'm putting that as like late elementary through middle school, there is a lot of gender exploration that these kids are doing, and especially the girls, but not exclusive, or the ones who were starting as girls, but not exclusively. It's really all of the kids, to the point where it is almost a new normal that investigating gender is part of coming of age. And I can hear, I, I've always been an ally to queer folks, and I don't doubt that trans people's lived experiences are real in any way. And I don't want to do harm to that community. And also, as a parent at the time, I was like, how do I express this strange, nuanced space that I'm in where I'm like, my child is going through a gender journey. I can see that it's a norm. Conservatives would call it social contagion. I will not use the term contagion because that has such a negative connotation. We'll come back to that. But there is surely a social element because it's a social norm now. It's okay to say, I'm gender fluid, or I'm non-binary, or I'm any of these new designations that are coming up. It's a new vocabulary. It's a new way of approaching adolescence. I don't think it's doing harm. I think it would do harm to negate my child's lived experience. And also, it would do harm to take this initial tiny step forward that my child and so many other children were making and take it as fact, like immutable fact, and start making dramatic decisions around medical treatment for this. When in my mind, as her parent, I was like, I don't know that this is something that is going to last. And um, how do I put that question out loud as a parent without doing immense harm? That was the interesting editorial space of Pink Hair and Pronouns as a publication, but also parenting my child and having others come to me and saying, I could really use advice about this. I know Nico has been through it. What advice do you have for me? I became first informally in my friend group and then out loud on the internet as someone people came to for advice. And I am not a child psychologist. I am not queer myself. I only know my own lived experience and my own relationship to my child and the group of kids who were going through similar things. So I learned a lot in writing about it, and I've learned and continue to learn a lot by continuing to know this group of kids, the eldest of whom are now about to graduate high school, because the cohort that my child came out with was her older sister's friends. That was who she was in really close communication with during the pandemic. And a lot of them, nearly all of them, came out in similar ways at close to the same time. And I have had people write back to my posts and say, social contagion, it's social contagion. As I said, I don't think of it as a disease. So it is not a contagion. Is it more socially acceptable in real life? Yes. Is it available on social media? Are these kids coming of age where they have role models who are queer? Yes. Is that a good thing in my mind? Yes. So long as we know how to parent through it. And this story was the starting place. I can now see through a 2026 lens that the advice I'm giving in this story and in so many of the others I wrote during the kind of heyday of Pink Hair and Pronouns falls so short of the advice that parents and their gender nonconforming children need, because it is no longer a neutral playing field. It was never neutral then either, but at least in blue cities, it's pretty common and didn't feel perilous. It is perilous now everywhere. And so I am writing less. And as over time, if you stick around for the I Write Out Loud project, you'll see as I'm sharing the more recent stories, I'm writing a lot out more loudly about this. That my primary concern isn't just, do they have the space to come into their own lived experience? It's, are we doing everything we can to protect these kids? And what weapons, metaphorically speaking, do they need in their arsenal to stay safe? That's the advice that I think is needed now, even more. The old advice is still needed. It's just harder, right? Because there's no longer this assumption of safety that I'm preaching here. I'm going to actually go to the story. And I realize that the audience has been very quiet. I've been talking a lot. Are there any comments or questions here? Because I recognize I'm talking about a very heated topic. I don't know if anyone here in the chat is themselves queer or is raising a queer child. I would love to hear your points of view if you have them here. And I'm going to shift over here to this window where I have the story. Is my mouse still working? It is. And walking through the story here, I kind of start a bit cutesy of like, who's this story for? And I'm like, I'm basically saying, if you are a Republican creeper, then buzz off. This isn't for you. And then I go through a quiz where I'm being very tongue in cheek about, like, have your children done any of these things? Like, informed you of a new preferred pronoun or gender, picked a new preferred name, come out at the same time with the rest of their friend group, blah, 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 blah. If so, congrats. Your child is still the same child they have always been and still deserving of your love, support, all of it unconditionally. So that's the start. And then I walk through some vocabulary and I acknowledge, for folks who are unfamiliar with these terms, yes, they are overlapping. Yes, they are. They could be confusing, and it's entirely possible to use the wrong one. But don't mock them. This is an emerging vocabulary in our culture, and your child likely knows the nuances, and so you need to know them too to keep up. They need to know you're keeping up. So the next part of the story is what I want to read because it's it's the memoir part of the story. It's the heart of the story. It is my child's coming out story, and it includes a screenshot of the note that she gave, making a heart, but also the note. So I am going to read for a moment, and I will be looking off to the side so I can see my screen. So bear with me while I read. Nico's story, shared with their consent. In winter 2020 through 2021, my two daughters spent hours texting with their friends. During peak COVID, it was their only social outlet. They were in 7th and 5th grades, and my youngest tagged along in the older kids' conversations. One evening, she let me know many of her older sister's friends were changing their names and genders. They hadn't told their parents yet, but within the friend group, new identities were being carved. In her voice, I could hear she was considering a change as well. Fast forward a month or so. What even was time during COVID, anyways? Every girl in my eldest child's friend group changed their names and pronouns, except for her. Her identity has been a rock, firmly on Team Girl. Then my youngest came downstairs on the cusp of her 11th birthday, handed me this note, and suddenly was no longer a daughter, or a her, or Annika. They were Nico. And here's the note. Hi, I am gender fluid. Please call me Nico from now on. It is my top choice for a new name. I have made a basic guide to answer any questions if you can find it below. Number 1, if you are talking about me and I'm not there, please use they, them pronouns. Number 2, please ask what my pronouns are. Number 3, you can share this with other people or post it on Facebook because that's what you do when you think something is cute. Thanks. I did think the note was cute, but it was much more than cute. It was articulate, it was assertive, it was clear, it was confident, and it demonstrated how well they knew their audience. I was and still am immensely proud of how assured my child felt in sharing their truth and that they trusted me to relay the message, which I did, simply and succinctly, and on Facebook as instructed. Annika, here's my note. Annika left me a note, Annika with an asterisk, left me a note last night and asked me to share it with all of you. The highlights are 1, gender fluid, 2, they, them pronouns, 3, with the asterisk going there, call them Nico now. And to quote them, thanks. The responses were unequivocally supportive. I'm so grateful Nico had an accepting, loving online community to come out to. For many months following this note, Nico experimented with gender and sexual identity. In addition to identifying as gender fluid, they explored non-binary, neo-boy, pansexual, bisexual, and lesbian as they explored their fluid new world. Now 13 years old, which this was 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago. Now 13 years old, Nico has settled on use whatever pronouns you want, and I alternate between she and they. She's given me permission to use the words daughter and sister for her, and for this, I'm immensely grateful. I missed those words a lot. So, that is Nico's coming out story, simplified. And the story still holds. And here's one thing that's really interesting about that story. I was so cocky and sure of myself when she gave me that note. I told her I loved her. I shared the note. I told them I loved them. I shifted pronouns, but I didn't actually understand her note fully. And I didn't understand it until I think till I posted the story and I really read it with the knowledge of time because she says I am gender fluid. And then number 2 in her list is, please ask what my pronouns are. That note was for me. And I read gender fluid and was like, okay, so she's non-binary. And what she really meant is gender fluid, which was my gender changes all the time. And she was asking me to continuously ask for what her pronouns were then. And I didn't do that. I messed that up. I wish I had understood it better at the time and listened better. We all have to live and learn. This is, I always call it parenting without a roadmap. This is an area of parenting where we are truly parenting without a roadmap, even taking all the political crap out of it. There is no chapter, or there was no chapter in what to expect when you're expecting about when your child declares a new pronoun or name. If I had come home to my parents and said, I don't think I'm neither a boy nor a girl, I'm gender fluid, and now I want you to call me insert name, they would have been like, go finish your homework, Dana. And that would have been it. There was none of this. And I can understand why it's confusing for older parents. All parents are older, but I didn't have Nico till I was almost 40. So I'm an older parent. I'm in a liberal city. I try to keep up. So these terms were not new to me. But yeah, it was a really tumultuous, I hope not for her, but for me, wanting to make sure I was doing the right thing and staying on my toes. And the content that I went on to write after this, the essays I went to write on to write about my child and our lived experiences as they were going through their gender journey. It was a lot of parenting on the fly. There's the time that, they asked me for a binder. There was the time when right after this, when we walked into the pediatrician's office and I said, I asked, do you want me to talk to your doctor about your gender and name change? Yes. Do you want to talk about anything medical about it? No. And so I just said, as we got there, this is, Annika is now going by Nico. And the doctor was like, oh, great. Are you using new pronouns too? And Nico said, yes, it's they, them. And our beloved pediatrician said, oh, well, there's medicine you can take to not go through puberty. Do you want to take it? And my jaw about hit the floor as I kept my composure. But I was like, wow, that is not my 11-year-old's decision to make the week after they change a pronoun. Like, wow, are we really rushing them to the gender clinic? So I would take that in Seattle over feeling like my child is unsafe in other areas. But there were a lot of, here's the mailman. My dog might bark. No, she's being quiet so far. So it was constantly thinking on my feet. Karen is asking, did you get them a binder? Karen, I wrote about this, and the story will eventually live here in I Write Out Loud. My child is tiny. Nico is still a very tiny person. And at the time, they sent me, sorry, there's someone right outside my door. I think they're just putting mail in the mailbox. And they're listening to music. You could probably hear it. Anyhow, I don't know why they're lingering for so long. We'll keep going. So the binders that Nico sent me, they were very cute, rainbows and all kinds of patterns. They appeared very well made, reputable company. They started at a size 32, pretty normal for ribcage stuff. And so, again, thinking on the fly that I was like, well, Nico, let's measure your ribcage. and it was 24. So um, I had to say, like, this is all. I have no problem with you wanting something like this, but this binder won't work. They're not made for kids as young as you are, who have the size of the rib cage that you have. I did not body shame. And I said, what do you think if we go to like Old Navy and look at sports bras and tank tops that could maybe do about the same thing, but that come in your size? And that was what we did. Thinking on my feet, you guys. So yeah, the intention of Pink Hair and Pronouns that this essay was the genesis of was trying to find other parents like me to learn from my experiences through sharing stories and some advice. Medium didn't have an ability to talk. If I had had an ability to talk like this, I probably would have started a weekly podcast to go with it and had guests on and had questions being answered. It's not, there were occasionally in the chat, there were questions, but it was mostly an outgoing channel. And I loved it. And I got to share the stories from so many different points of view. And it became really clear that the blue state parents and the red state parents were up against very different challenges. And Melissa Corrigan, amazing writer and podcaster here on Substack, uh, the very first thing she posted to Medium was a story for Pink Hair and Pronouns. I was her very first subscriber because she came in brand new to Medium. Her husband had somehow found, I think maybe this story or one like it, and she said, "Can I write for you?" So it became a really cool community. And it is still here on Substack. You can subscribe to it if you want, but I don't really write expressly for it. I cross-posted this story today, and I think that will probably be the strategy going forward, is that it will be a place that cross-posts content that is relevant to the audience. But the essays themselves are going to live on I Write Out Loud. So I see that there are some more comments. Let me come over here where I can read them better. Do I still accept submissions on Medium? Sure. If there's a submission that comes in, absolutely. Or if someone wants to put it on Substack, absolutely. I would take contributors if there's anyone who wants to read it. I will say it comes with risk. If you go to Project 2025, it defines gender. If you believe in, I forgot the exact term, but if you believe in trans ideology, we'll just say if you believe gender is on a continuum, if you write about it, it's considered pornography, and pornography is punishable by prison time. It's written in Project 2025, and it does make you a domestic terrorist now. Sorry. I think I meet every one of those 7 criteria for domestic terrorists. So just add this on the pile with the others, I guess. Let me see. Tariq says, "Oh my God, I totally misread binder. I thought like a school binder to keep clippings." No, you're not dense. You said I'm dense sometimes. It's not being dense. It's the English language is ambiguous. It's the same word. We could have binders full of binders, right? Um, and Shayla is saying, I would have responded the same way, I think. I don't know if you mean to the binder story or to the doctor story. Sorry, Shayla, I'm late coming back. But yeah, it seems like now is the good time to ask questions if you have them. And yes, parenting without guardrails. If you have questions or comments, or Shayla, if you want to clarify what you mean by the I would have responded the same way. Oh, at the doctor's office. I stayed there were other things that were said that I'll talk about when I get into that essay. I don't know when I will, but some point in the coming weeks, that I had to say, like, can we all agree that the right focus is on Nico's health? And we all agreed. And then I got home and I called the doctor's office and was like, you cannot spring things like this on parents in front of the kids. This is not right. It's not that I'm objecting to it. It's that the medicalizing of it was a lot. Let's see here. Adorable note. Thank you. I did love her note. It is awfully cute. Lynette, you're multitasking. You're listening to me and Egberto Willis. I'm honored I get to even share your attention. Egberto is amazing. Dana, have you talked to your child about what she thought was happening at that time? Did she feel pressure to conform in some way? I should go back and ask her about that now. She's really reticent to talk about it. For a while, like, as she was coming through, when I was still checking in, like, "Is it okay to use she or they? Do you have a preference?" She was very dismissive, like, "I don't care. I don't care what you say." And for a while, I was walking between she and they, and I'm now just full on she. I think with friends, if, a lot of times with her age group, they have to say, I think she will say she, they, or I don't care as her pronouns. I suspect that there still is some questioning going on in her head that she's not talking about. Um, but I don't know what it is entirely. And I hope she feels comfortable coming to me over time about whatever it is. Whatever it is. Let me see here. I'm scrolling back up to see if I missed anything. Oh, Karen. Karen says I look beautiful today. Thank you. Someone had complimented my sweater too. So this is a funny sweater. I bought it before Christmas from this website that has been taunting me in social media ads for a while called Disturbia. It's like kind of gothy, really cute clothes, and ordered this, and it's super itchy and it's a little too big. So you have the sleeves rolled up. It's a bit large, and I meant to return it and also a dress that I got from there that I was pining after for months. And it's cute, but it doesn't quite fit right. And then in typical Dana fashion, it sat in the bag in my room and it's now February and I'm sure it's too late to return it. And so today I was like, I'm going to wear the mushroom sweater. I feel like it's cute on camera. It's like sheer, if you can see that. So I'm wearing a white tank top underneath it, which is why it looks very white. And my skin is pale up top. So it does look cute on camera. So I'll wear it for lives. I love the color. But I think if I wore it all day, I would be itchy and sweaty, and I'm very tactile about clothing. This one it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be, but it's a bit itchy. So it is hard to buy things online sometimes. Oh, here's another good question from Shayla. Did the two explore the idea of a therapist to have a neutral person to talk to? Um, we had talked about it. It was during pandemic. So she probably could have used a therapist. We didn't have one then. Um, Yeah, we didn't. We did not pursue therapy, and maybe we should have. But, yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and it's a luxurious problem to have now. I fully acknowledge that. But at the time, the push was to go to the gender clinic at Seattle Children's, which is a wonderful hospital and a wonderful clinic for those in need. I think there's an assumption at that clinic, though, that this is a change that's permanent. And um, I was like, I don't like my very strong gut was that it was not. I don't think I biased her along the way. I hope I didn't. If she comes to me later in life and tells me that I did, I will apologize and have a conversation. If she later in life is like, I am trans and I want to transition, like I will respect her choices and I will always love her no matter. There's nothing, she knows that part of it. There's nothing she could do or say that would make that stop. But um, I think in the Sunday show, I'm going to do more of a recap of Nico and all of the kids and sort of what's happened to them over time, because at the time, it was new enough that I had very few elder parents of elder kids, to go to and be like, how did this turn out? It's pretty new, right? So there wasn't a lot of data there, so to speak. I have now watched these kids for 5 years, and I'm going down my list. So my child kind of came back after a year or so and is now just whatever she, her. Another one of the kids who um, their mom was quite sure that their daughter was now their son, and was trans, and who very much changed their appearance and had been asking for surgical intervention at a very young age, is now very much a beautiful young woman, um, and is bisexual, dating men and women, so queer. So that's one. Another one who came out as a boy, is still living as almost a young man now, is now 18, but is still not out, is out at school, but not to broader families. So is like mostly out, but not fully. Another one is, I believe, still using he, him. I don't know that child as well. So um, it's kind of all over the map in terms of in my lived experience. I am not speaking for the whole population. Uh, these kids now, as young adults at 18, about half are still identifying as either trans or non-binary in some form, and the others are not. It's an interesting data point, right? We will see over time where that all goes. Let me see here. Question. Um, my kiddo born, is it Sushi? Are you okay if I read this out loud? Because I don't want to read it out loud if you just want it to live in the chat and not be on the internet. So let me know yes or no. Otherwise, I won't read your comment out loud. Tariq, you are saying, do you have to navigate reluctance, resistance from family or close friends? I am regarding my girl's sexuality, and I'm still struggling with how to manage others. Some, like my family, was pretty cool. Here's the interesting thing, actually, I forgot to say. Half of these kids have kind of moved back to their own genders. They've all kept the name change. Nico did not go back to her birth name, and nor did the other kids. So there was some it wasn't like cruel resistance. It wasn't like you're parenting poorly. It wasn't like we don't believe her. But, my family would mess up here and there, and they'd be like, but they is a, plural, not singular, and that's weird, that kind of stuff. Thankfully, I don't come from a conservative family. I mean, my father and his wife are and were very Trumpy, but my dad has dementia. Amazingly, and I have some stories about I have a story about my youngest trying to teach him about pronouns and hers. He never really grasped that, but he did grasp the name change. He knows her new name. It's stuck. And I think that's rather beautiful because he's pretty he's got pretty bad dementia. So so I have had to navigate some, but thankfully not much. And if it's something like sexuality, you're like, well, you can't really argue with who they're being sexual with. That's what they're doing. Other people don't really get to have an opinion on that, I guess, other than thinking it's morally wrong, and you're probably not going to change their minds. I hope they love your kids, their relatives through it. Sushi has said yes. My kiddo born Sierra has legally changed their name to Axel per my permission. Axel Nova, non-binary, they, them. All very cool names. Sierra is beautiful and Axel Nova is beautiful. So I'm very happy Axel has you as a parent to support them through it. It is wonderful. We are at the top of the hour. We're just past the top of the hour. Thank you guys all so much for joining. I will post this video and I will be posting another story tomorrow. It might be the new one, but I actually think it will be another origin story. We can take a vote here. Should it be my origin story writing about dating and relationships, or my origin story writing about my father and his dementia? Go ahead and vote in the chat, and I'll go with the majority if there are folks here to still vote. I know we're over the top of the hour, seeing a lot of goodbyes and thank yous, but if there's anyone here to vote, I will take your vote, and if not, I will pick. Dating and relationships, says Karen. Either, says Shayla. Okay. Perhaps dating and relationships. It is. I love all the names. My genderqueer kiddo's name is Elm. Jane, I have a whole story I wrote about this of how so many gender neutral names are on nature. Ash and cedar and elm. Elm is pretty. I haven't heard that one much, but sage. There tend to be a lot of nature names, and I love that. I was very happy that my child picked Nico. It sounds like a diminutive of Annika, her birth name, and it's just a cute name. Plus, Nico, different spelling, and EKO was in the running for her birth name because we're both really big Nico Case fans. So I was happy about that. Whichever one I wish to release. Oh, Well, they're both coming out in the next couple days. Dating and relationships. All right, dating and relationships it is. Oh, I mean, I love this story. It's called I Had a Little Art Relationship. I'm posting that one for tomorrow. Boy, the behind the scenes story on that one. It's just the craziest story I'll ever have, and it's one I cannot tell. How intriguing is that? Okay. Dating and relationship at our age, Gen X. Yeah, it's one of my favorite beats, Tarek. I write about it all the time. It's never a dull moment, that's for sure. All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. See you tomorrow, same time. And the essay will be out in the morning at 8:08 a.m. Bye.